Alright, y'all. What up, everybody? It's your boy, Cardinal Red, and we are back for another one. Alright, y'all. So, the topic of the day is going to be U.S. media is biased against Manny Pacquiao, even though his accomplishments are greater than Floyd Mayweather. Alright, y'all, so that's a mouthful. I know, man. It's a mouthful. I'm trying to cut this off, man. So give me a sec. Alright, I cut it off. Alright, so where do we start? So the US media, y'all, I'm gonna start with the US media. Okay, so I get a lot of questions, a lot of comments about biasness in boxing and boxing talk, and you know, this channel being unbiased or that channel being biased toward a certain fighter. And I will say this about my channel first. I didn't get into boxing talk to talk about every fighter. As a boxing fan, I've only been selective to certain fighters. Like, when I was a Morales fan, I was only watching Morales. And then Pacquiao came along. And then I was looking for Pacquiao, but I could never find Pacquiao. He wasn't on American TV at the time. And then Bernard Hopkins came along. I was a Hopkins fan. And then Pacquiao ended up beating Morales. So I was a Hopkins fan and a Pacquiao fan. And even before that, I was a Tyson fan. But I was a Hopkins fan and a Pacquiao fan. And it really didn't go beyond that, because the other fighters who I really liked, like Morales, had passed away. Floyd Mayweather was acting weird. You know, he was doing weird things that I really didn't like in him as a fighter. And, you know, just the other fighters that I followed, they weren't as prevalent as Bernard Hopkins and Manny Pacquiao. So I would say when I started my channel, I guess my channel is biased towards Manny Pacquiao as a fighter. Like, I don't base a lot of my content on other fighters outside of the welterweight division, but I do cover all welterweight fighters. You know, I will say I cover pretty much all the welterweights. I try not to jump in and out of weight classes because I don't want to pretend like I'm a fan of everybody. Because I'm not a fan of everybody. But I do like certain fighters from other weight classes now that I feel like are going to be the next generation of great boxers. So that's just for me and my channel. I would say, yes, I'm slightly biased toward Pacquiao as a boxing fan. Just simply because he is my favorite fighter. But when I give my objective opinion, I'm trying to make that opinion as honest as possible. Now, when it comes to the media, and especially the media on YouTube overall, I don't think that is the case. I think the media overall in America is extremely biased toward American sports figures and fighters, and just all around, you know, athletes. They're biased toward American athletes. And I think that's simply because the popularity of foreign athletes is not there. And for most foreign athletes, you're not popular unless you go up against an American athlete, unfortunately. Do I feel like that's fair? No, I don't. Especially in the sport of boxing, because a guy could be the best boxer in the world, but you'll never hear about him unless he's famous in America. If he's not famous in America, you'll never hear about that guy, and they'll still be touting whatever fighter they feel like is the best guy out of America. And that trickles down to Manny Pacquiao because, listen, a lot of boxing fans, I'm not going to say all, but a majority of boxing fans, the hardcore boxing fans and boxing channels, when it comes to the media, are like black channels. They're African American channels, and they cover the majority of African American fighters. And they give boxing talk from an African American point of view. So when it comes to them breaking down Manny Pacquiao, a lot of them don't have respect for Manny Pacquiao because their favorite African American fighter, Floyd Mayweather, beat Manny Pacquiao. And let's just be honest, that's why a lot of these guys and a lot of these channels and a lot of the media don't like Manny Pacquiao. It's not that they don't like him, it's that they feel like he's not worthy like Mayweather's worthy, because Mayweather beat him and Mayweather makes tremendous amounts of money when he fights. And I say that because I was watching some interviews earlier, and there were some guys talking about Manny Pacquiao and Mayweather, and why Mayweather is going to be remembered as the greatest stylistic fighter. And I feel like Mayweather's going to be remembered as the guy who put money into boxing. And I feel like Mayweather generates so much money is why his fanfare is so big. It's weird because black people, we follow the money. The younger black people follow the guy with the most money. So, that's the guy who's going to be the most popular. And Mayweather, he put his money on display, so he became extremely popular amongst African American fans. And I feel like since a lot of these boxing channels, especially, I don't know about the Filipino channels or the non-English speaking channels because I can't understand them. I don't speak their language, so I don't know how many of those are extremely popular other than Powerway Podcast. And he doesn't. His channel's not in English. I just follow him just because he's a Pacquiao fan. But because of those channels want to be with the African American crowd, and they want to get the views from the African American crowd, they kind of have to pander to what the African American crowd wants, and that is to, degrade Manny Pacquiao as a fighter, and kind of diminish his accomplishments, especially when comparing him to other African American fighters or other American fighters just in general. Because if you think about it, Manny Pacquiao's accomplishments are greater than Floyd Mayweather's in the sport of boxing. Manny Pacquiao has a record that nobody probably ever again in history will ever break with that 8 division record. Manny Pacquiao has done things in the boxing ring like defeating Margarito, which people thought was impossible. Even beating Oscar De La Hoya, which I think a lot of people at the time, looking back on those fights, now you would say, well, those guys were weight drained, or this guy shouldn't have been fighting at that weight, or he caught him at this time. But in the record books, Manny Pacquiao beat those guys, not only beat them, but beat them down, beat them convincingly. And 5 linear champ? I think it's 4 or 5 linear championships. These are records that'll probably never be broken again. It definitely that 8 division championship will never be broken again. And when you put coming up from all those weights, winning championships in pretty much not all of them, but pretty much all of those weight classes that he went through. Being one of the most viewed fighters in the world, being one of the most famous fighters in the world, becoming champion at 41 years of age, becoming a welterweight champion. I think that's a record at 41 years of age. These are records nobody's ever probably going to break again. And people put Mayweather ahead of Pacquiao because he has an O. Now, other than that record that Mayweather has with his O, with his actual boxing record, having no losses on it, he's really set no other records that could be considered as unbreakable. Now, when you think about greatness in boxing, you think about people setting records that would be, almost impossible to break, like world records. What Manny Pacquiao has done is a world record. It's a record that will probably never be broken again with that 8 divisions. So I think just that alone places Manny Pacquiao on a higher plateau of greatness in the sport of boxing. And I think at this point in his career, which is why I had a problem with the Ugas fight, I didn't want to see him lose to a lower tier fighter. I felt like Ugas was very dangerous. Even though I don't feel like Ugas is a lower tier fighter, he's a champion now for a reason, but he didn't earn his belt in the beginning. He beat Manny Pacquiao. We take nothing away from him, but he didn't earn that belt. That belt was given to him because they stripped Manny Pacquiao for inactivity, which is unfair in a lot of ways because they they should have just made that fight mandatory. If they were going to have that fight almost 8-9 months later, they should have just made the fight in the first place. That should have been the first fight. That's what the argument I kept making. Why isn't Pacquiao just going after that belt again? Because I felt like there was no way in HE double hockey sticks, Earl Spence and Terrence Crawford were going to give Pacquiao a shot. You know, I just felt like those guys, if they're too afraid to fight each other, there's no way they're going to get in the ring with Manny Pacquiao and risk getting beat by the old guy, especially after they saw what Keith Thurman went through, what Adrian Broner went through, what Jesse Vargas, went through, what Lucas Matisse went through. These are the 4 or 5 opponents that Pacquiao beat before he challenged these guys. And when it came down to Earl Spence and Terrence Crawford getting in the ring with Manny Pacquiao, we got extremely close. They teased us with it, and they both waived the fight. On Earl Spence's, he at least signed the fight, but he got really close to it, and then the retinal detachment came along. And I'll say this for Earl Spence's defense, and I feel like that happened during the accident. I don't feel like that's something that happened during sparring. He's saying it happened during sparring, and it happened a few weeks before the fight. And it's funny to me because Captain Full G just did a video, and he was saying that injury happened in Texas, not in Vegas. Even though I don't think they were sparring in Vegas. They might have been doing light sparring. But if the injury happened in Texas and you still went out to Vegas, you knew something was wrong, and instead of which means he had plenty of time to reschedule that fight. He already knew there was something wrong, and he's probably gonna have to back out. So instead of just being honest about it, it seems kind of like this is what the scenario was. It seems like, okay, they might have known 3, maybe 4 weeks before the fight. The fight was canceled 2 weeks before. Okay, so he was still in Texas when it happened. So, and a lot of people are saying that Ugas was informed about the injury before Pacquiao was, and Ugas was informed he was going to be replacing Spence before Pacquiao was, and that makes a lot of sense now because if Spence knew 2 weeks before they canceled the fight that he was going to cancel, and he already let Al Heyman know, then Al Heyman, I'm pretty sure, because this is according to Captain 4G, they told Al Heyman, and Al Heyman already knew, so he knew that, okay, well, I can put you guys in this place, and he probably told you guys, like, hey, we're going to substitute you for Earl Spence, and this is probably 3 weeks, maybe 3.5 weeks before the fight, and maybe a week before the fight was actually canceled, so you guys had an extra week of preparation, according to what Captain Full G is saying. So it kind of seems like that Earl Spence knew he was injured, and instead of pulling out quickly and rescheduling, he pulled out at a convenient time for you guys to slip in there and perhaps get a win, which he in fact did. And I think that's quite shady, man. And I think what's going on in the sport of boxing is shady overall, because not only is the narrative being shaped toward Manny Pacquiao needs to get out of boxing, but you got pretty much all of the media saying the same thing. From the ESPNs to the YouTubers saying that Manny Pacquiao looked old, that he looked slow, that he's not the same fighter he once was. and they're not basing this off all the facts. You know, they're not giving us everything that's going on behind the scenes, and I think that is extremely unfair. I think that that's a narrative that was formulated after Pacquiao lost to Floyd Mayweather. I think people lost so much money on that Pacquiao fight because people really thought Pacquiao was going to beat him, and a lot of people bet on Pacquiao and lost their money. And I think ever since then, to be honest with you, a lot of people turned on Pacquiao over the fact that he lost their money. It has really nothing to do with his talent level or what he's accomplished in the sport. It's a lot of people bet on Pacquiao during that Mayweather fight, and when they lost their money and they got gypped in the pay-per-view, then a lot of people turned on Pacquiao, and it's been that way ever since. So I think, you know, the media, the Floyd Mayweather situation, everything's against Pacquiao at this moment. And to kind of wrap it up, I don't want to see Pacquiao go out on the note of your Danish Ugas. I don't want to see that be his last fight, because I had been saying, man, he needs to fight you guys. He needs to fight you guys before they ever talked about Crawford, before they ever talked about Ryan, even the Spence fight, getting, you know, all of that talk. I said he needs to be focusing on you guys, getting that belt back, putting him, you know, that would be his tune-up, and that would put him back in play to fight Earl Spence or Terrence Crawford. And I didn't want to see him get beat by a guy like you guys on some sneaky stuff, you know, and that's what ended up happening. And, you know, I don't want to see that be the end of Manny Pacquiao's career. I would hope and pray that Pacquiao decides to come back and take that rematch in January like he keeps saying he is. And I would hope that Pacquiao actually does run for the presidency, even though I don't think he is. I think Pacquiao might actually back out of that, go back for the Senate seat, and try to formulate some type of new party that he can be more in tune and more aligned with because of what's going on with PDP Laban. And I feel like this. I feel like if Pacquiao trains hard, he's focused on you guys, that's the fight. You know, he knows that's the fight that he's going to get. I think he can beat you guys convincingly, get his belt back, put himself back in play for a Earl Spence or a Crawford fight going into his presidency, because he's not running. Even if he does run for presidency, these elections don't happen till May 2022, so he has plenty of time for all this stuff to happen. And I would just hope and pray this is what he decides to do, is to fight you guys, get his belt back, or just give a formidable fight to the fans as his retirement fight and his measuring stick fight of whether he wants to continue in the sport of boxing. Because I do think he has time. If he's not going to run for presidency, there's still another year, maybe a year and a half, that Pacquiao could give to the sport of boxing. Let me know what y'all think about that, man. Hit that like button for me. Please subscribe. Do y'all think the U.S. media is biased against Manny Pacquiao simply because he's a foreign fighter and, you know, this is an American market? You think it's fair for Manny Pacquiao to be... I think it is very biased. I think it's biased all the way around. Let me know. Hit that like button for me. Please subscribe. It's your boy Cardinal Red, man. I appreciate y'all for coming through.